All right, Rick.
What's up?
What's up? Welcome to the show.
Yeah, thanks, man.
Hey, our stories crossed paths about a decade ago, 2013.
Yeah.
Tell us a little bit about that experience and what you were doing leading up to that.
Oh, bro. Going all the way back to 2013. Pretty crazy, man. Like, so my story is nuts, and we can get into that later on, and you know my story front and back. But what led me to get in contact with you was actually, man, I was working at a job up in Estes Park and just not making it, not enough money. Something happened up there, man. And I had to quit the job. And I was like, okay, I got to quit and I'm going to do my own thing. So I started my own company. And you know how you guys do the advertising around all northern Colorado. You guys are on the billboard. You're on the bus stops. You know, everywhere I looked, it was M&E Painting. And I said, well, I know painting. I grew up in painting, and so I'm just going to call these guys. And so I called you guys. Yep. I remember you guys brought me in for an interview, and it was a group interview, which I was super nervous about. But I was the only one that showed up.
You were the only one that showed up.
The only one that showed up at the group interview. And I just sat down and just shared who I was, man. And I think you thought I was some Bible thumper as well, because I was talking about Jesus and God and all this stuff. Did not let off too much on my past. You never do that in the first interview.
Not with that story.
Not with that story.
Not with this story.
No, yeah. And so, did that. And then, man, it was like a week later, and you called me up, one of the project managers, and said, hey, we'd love to give you some work. And so that's how it started, man.
So we popped a sign in a ditch somewhere in Loveland.
Mm-hmm.
You saw it, gave us a call.
Yeah.
You come to a group interview.
Yeah.
Nobody's at the group interview.
The only one that showed up.
Who are these guys? They got marketing, nobody coming to their interviews.
Yeah.
And I remember you left that, and I spoke with Kevin. I go, oh, what a nice Christian man. I think he's going to go to Bible study after this, right?
Yeah.
Squeaky clean. And then we got working. Yeah. And the work went well. The business was growing. And then I remember, so this whole podcast is about stories and how our stories interact and where they go from there and where we are now. It's a decade later. I remember when I made that Facebook post, company's growing. You'd been an independent contractor doing great work. Yeah. And I made a post about a job opportunity. And then we found ourselves standing in the street in Southeast Fort Collins with a not so happy customer.
Not so happy customer, man.
Were we kicked off the job, or did we just decide to leave the job?
No. So she was really upset from work that a previous contractor did. And so you guys brought me out there because you knew what I did. I did good work. And I had actually read that post the night before that. And you called me and said, dude, can you meet me out there? This girl is crazy. She was a crazy woman, crazy customer. And I said, sure, man, I'm out there, whatever you need. And we went out there, and it was nuts, man. And we walked around. I remember walking around that house, and she's pointing out all this stuff, and you guys are going at it, and I'm just there to do the work. I'm like, man, I'm just going to do the work, whatever you tell me to do. She was having us paint wires and weird boards and all these other crazy stuff. And then once that was over, I see us standing outside in front of my truck. And then I brought it up. I said, hey, I seen that post that you posted, and tell me about that. You told me about that. And then at the end of that, I said, well, there's something I need to tell you about my life.
And then you said...
And then I said... Wait, what did I say?
You said I got felonies.
Oh, yeah. No. I was like, man, I got felonies.
Felonies.
And you said, oh, well, what kind of felonies you got? And so, went into my story. And I don't know what your reaction was internally to that, but I know it didn't stop me from getting the job, because I got the job. Tell me, dude, what was your internal reaction to that, dude? Because you never told me that.
Well, so we're standing there, and we had a very demanding, upset customer. She was pissed off. She's like, "Get out of here! I don't care who did the work." Yeah. And we're standing there like, "What just happened?" Oh, let's talk about this Facebook post. We have this leadership opportunity, and I told you what the process looks like. So it's another group interview, and we're going to talk deep. We're going to do background checks and all this stuff, and took you through the process. And I remember you said something to the effect, "I've got felonies, bro." And I said, "What did you not pay?" My first reaction: did you not pay some parking tickets?
Yeah.
Bible study. What could it be? And then you didn't tell me right there. I think we sat down, right?
We did. We scheduled time to sit down, and that's when I kind of shared everything with you.
And what we shared opened up chapter 2 of Painted Baby, which was your story. So share that, right? 2013, you're up in Estes Park, signing a ditch, kicked off a job, leadership opportunity. Yeah. And you're just good Christian, God-loving, Bible-quoting, all about Jesus guy. What happened before that brought you there? And tell everybody watching and listening the story you shared with me.
Well, just like you say in the book, man, like don't be afraid of your story, because your story is powerful. And, I've always been, upfront with everybody about it. I don't let people know my story right off bat. I want them to meet the real me and meet who I am. And then I love to drop it on them as soon as they get comfortable with me and they love me and they got all these ideas who I am. And that's when I drop the story on them, because it has that much more of an impact. It has that much more of a wow factor. And they look at me and they go, I would never have guessed. And that's just, man, for me as a Christian, that's glory to God, bro, because it's like, look what he's done in my life. And so, yeah, man, 2013, I mean, my story goes all the way back from childhood. I was that typical, low income family. My mom and dad, they were young when they had kids. Put it in perspective, my mom was 15 when she had my sister, 17 when she had my brother, and then 19 or 20 when she had me. So she had 3 kids basically at the age of 20.
Youngest of 3.
Youngest of 3.
Started at 15.
Yeah, started at 15. And so you can guess, somebody that young having kids, they don't know what they're doing, And so my mom and dad, they love to party, and they did, man, and that's what they did. And so growing up, we were in that, and they loved to drink, they loved to do all those things. And we didn't have a lot of money. I mean, we were your typical food stamps, go stand in the food line, get the government food boxes, the government food cheese. That was some good cheese, though, bro. I got to buy. That was a good cheese. Government had some good cheese, bro. But that was us, man. And I remember, looking back, it was funny because I just shared my testimony last night with some youth, and I was just telling them, I tried weed for the first time when in second grade.
Second grade, you smoked weed for the first time.
And I think that's 7 years old. If you go back, I mean, you're 6 to 7 years old, So just think about 6 or 7 year olds nowadays. Could you imagine that little 6 or 7 year old smoking weed?
Those are the jiu-jitsu kids down below.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's
but that was me. Me and my buddy were together. He found some weed under his dad's couch, and we smoked it. I don't know if I got high or not, but I know I tried it, man. And so that was the upbringing that I was in.
So weed at 7.
Weed at 7, drunk at 10. Parents divorced when I was 9. Mm-hmm. And so my father, he was in and out of prison, jail, pretty much my whole life. A lot of my early childhood, I remember standing in the line to go see him at the county jail, rocking up to the glass, talking to him through the glass, window. And it was just that continuous cycle, in and out, in and out, in and out, in and out. And that's eventually why my mom divorced him. Because of that lifestyle. So they got divorced, and I started living the divorce life. Kids, 1 week you're with mom, the next week you're with dad, and it was back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. But I wanted to live with my dad. I love my dad, and I honor him to this day. He's in heaven right now, and one day I'll get to see him again and shoot the breeze. But he did the best that he could with what he's had. And in fact, on his deathbed, bro, he we made amends. Because we had a broken relationship.
I remember that.
And he told me something I'll never forget. He said, Rick, I didn't know what it was like to have a father. And so I didn't know how to be a father, And so that meant a lot to me, in that moment.
Can I pause right there?
Yeah.
So somebody that's listening to this right now that has a similar story, maybe it's not the same upbringing, weed at 7, drunk at 9, parents divorced, but that doesn't have that fatherly figure. What would you say to somebody listening to this right now that doesn't have what you didn't have, knowing what you know now?
Yeah, I think it goes back to expectations, that we set expectations on our parents, and we should, right? That we should set those because they're our parents, they had us, they're raising us and those type of things. But sometimes we don't know the backstory, sometimes we don't know. I didn't know my dad's upbringing. I knew that he didn't know his dad. Yeah. I knew that, he that his mom, had 12 kids, all from majority from different dads, and so this is his life coming from him. And so I would just say, what are those good things about your parents? What are those things you can level on an even plane? You know what I mean? Yeah. And those are the things you focus on. Yes, there's all the stuff, right? Yeah, and I could beat the bush. You weren't there for me. You were in prison. I needed you the most, which I did, emotionally, I really did. But, at the end, when we made amends, it was just one of those things like, forgotten, right? It's like, you know what, man? Forgiven, forgotten.
Here we are.
I love you. I'll see you again, and even the whole time. So he passed away in 2018, right at the end, December 2018. Yep. Actually, I'm sorry, January 2019. So he got sick in December. He was in the hospital from January 1st to January 28th. He passed away on the 28th, my wife's birthday, God forbid that, right? So that whole month in the hospital, you remember that I was working here. And
you were working here.
Yeah.
We were right,
you guys were,
we're right.
You guys supported me.
Together.
Yeah. And it was just a month of restoring our relationship. And so I would say to anybody listening, don't wait till the deathbed to do it. Don't wait till the deathbed to restore your relationship. And that was one thing I regretted, because when he passed away, I thought, man, I could have had this discussion a long time ago. Yeah. A long time ago, but pride and arrogance and, hurt and all those things that we grow up with will stop us from that, And so that's one regret I have. Could have had that talk a long time ago, and, it would have been better after that. But, it is what it is. And like I said, I never told him bye in the hospital. It was always see you later. Even when he took his last breath, see you later,
Yeah.
Love you, see you later. Because it is a see you later,
Do you think, so you mentioned that regret, do you think, being a pastor now, we'll get to where you are now, by the way, as a pastor, is that a man thing? Is that a pride thing? Do you see that across everybody? Is that a father-son dynamic? Where do you think that came from? Do you think everybody has that? Where do you see that? And how, what made you realize that looking back now? And how would you go back and possibly change that, or what would you tell your younger self?
Well, I don't think everybody has it, So we talk about having daddy issues, right? Mm-hmm. Girls have daddy issues, boys, men have daddy issues, and those type of things, right? Yeah. What we call it on the pastoral side is the father wound. Yeah. That when you're growing up, there's just that wound between you and your father, and there's a lot of pride on both sides. It's a two-way street, and so that's what it is. Whether he was an absentee father, a father that was there but was absent, if you know what I mean, working all the time, chasing careers, which that was my dad. He was there but he wasn't. He was working all the time, partying all the time. He did his own thing, but he provided for us. We had a roof over our head, food in our bellies as much as we could. So you have those scenarios, or you have the father that leaves, and abandons you as a child, and so you grow up with this sense of abandonment, or you grow up with this sense of hey, I don't know my dad. And there's statistics out there. I don't know them off the top of my head, but fatherless homes are responsible for a lot of suicides in kids. They're responsible for a lot of kids going to prison. Responsible for a lot of teen pregnancies amongst women. So having a father in the home is to the utmost importance for the success of the children. And it really is, one of those, you could say it's an epidemic in our country right now.
And those things you mentioned, right? So teen pregnancy and prison and drugs,
suicide,
and all of that.
Drugs,
These are the points and places that you just shared in your story. So is that a generational thing? Is there a history of fatherlessness and Scadden name leading up to
absolutely
the story that we're talking about?
I mean, you go back to my lineage. My grandma on my mom's side, her mom and dad were divorced. In fact, my mom still has a relationship with her real dad, but she doesn't call him my grandpa because he's an absentee. Yep. On my dad's side, his mom, was divorced and remarried 3 or 4 times. So this is in the lineage, and like my dad said on his deathbed, I never knew my father. Yeah. I didn't know that, Mm-hmm. And so to me, that struck me as going, and I allowed myself to have grace for him in that moment because, what example did he have to follow? None.
How can you be what you don't know what to do?
Yeah, and that's what he said. I didn't know, and so it is one of those things, man. Fatherless homes, a father wound. A lot of men struggle with it, and what we do, and what I did, and I'll get to this in my story, is we suppress it with success. We suppress it with drugs, sex, rock and roll, all those type of things, right?
All the stuff out there.
Yeah, but until that wound is restored, we're always going to try to fill it with something. Yeah. So that was my life, right? Growing up. But I wanted to live with my dad, and I did. I went and lived with him. He was still a partier, still doing his own thing. Yeah. A lot of things changed, man, and happened. So and our stories really collide and kind of go hand in hand. You always grow up and say, I don't ever want to be what my father is, right? And sure enough, I grew up and I did the same things he did. I still do some of the same things he did. Right. And I remember
I've seen you do those things.
Yeah.
And you've seen me, right? We've compared notes.
Oh, absolutely, man. And I remember, bro. It was, I can't remember the year, but my dad was out partying all night. He was selling drugs at the time, and he was on his way home, and he got into a drunk driving accident, man, a huge one, through an intersection. It almost killed him. He bit off half his tongue. He broke his hip. He, was in the hospital for weeks, broke his jaw. He had to have his jaw wired shut, came home, and it was a long process, man. It was huge. It was a big devastation for our family. He couldn't work. We were back on welfare. We, had people helping us. I mean, there was times when our electricity got shut off, because of this, and it was just a really tough time for our family. And I remember towards the end of his recovery, he was going to court for this thing because he was drunk and the other driver and all these other things. And he got sentenced, man, to prison, but he didn't go right away. He ran, and so he ran, dude, and he was on the run for 3 or 4 months until he got finally picked up, and it was just a crazy time, man. So at that time, I went to go live with my grandma when he went to prison. I was about 14 at the time, and this time and around that same time, I was experimenting with all kinds of drugs, weed, cocaine, no meth yet. I was experiencing with mushrooms and psychedelics and all those things, right? Acid.
You're just running the list.
I'm running the list.
Teens,
yeah,
right?
Yeah.
You're adolescent,
and we're doing anything and everything we could. And through that first year that he was in prison, he was writing back and forth and stuff. But then he started writing about Jesus, man. And I thought it's kind of strange. I've never heard my dad talk about Jesus or write about Jesus at all.
What did you think the first time that happened?
It was weird, man.
Yeah,
but I liked it. Okay. Because it was a different side of him, Growing up, it was always like, oh God, Dad's drinking again. And so I liked it, man. I loved the fact that my dad is writing about Jesus because it was different. Like I said, growing up, dude, he was the party dude. And I mean, there would be nights, bro, where they would be partying for 2 or 3 days straight. And here I am, just a little kid, man. I need to go to school tomorrow, but I can't sleep because everybody's loud upstairs. Yep. The music's bumping. There's adults up there screaming. And I remember some nights, bro, in my bed's just crying because I'm like, man, I don't know what to do. I got to get sleep. And here's this little boy doing that. And so this was refreshing. It was refreshing to go, oh man, like he's talking about some good stuff and maybe his life's going to be changed. Maybe he's going to come out and, do those things. And so over the course of those 2 years, for me going to visit him and, him writing and those type of things, like it truly was legit. Like he changed his life. And I remember when he got out, and it was almost like his redeemed story where he got out, he started his own company. He got all the kids back. We're all going to church. We're all doing that thing. And it was just good. It was refreshing to see, and then eventually, I gave my heart to Jesus, man. And I was completely changed. And I had one of those radical transformations.
When was that? So I remember you have kind of two parts
in
your story with your faith.
Yeah.
So when was that moment? So he starts talking about Jesus.
Yeah,
you like it. It's different. Tell me about that moment when you turned your life over to God and what that looked like.
Yeah, so 14, he went in, and just about towards the end of when I was 15, he got out and we started doing this thing. He giving my life to Christ. It was awesome, man. It was a change for me. I had a radical transformation. It was one of those moments where I threw away all my CDs. I stopped hanging out with all my friends. I stopped listening to some of the music I listened to. I mean, it was one of those radical transformations, and it was awesome, but it didn't last, bro. It didn't last for me.
Because there's more to the story.
There's more to the story, and
you
so
ended up in here.
Yeah, and so here we are. I'm going to school. I'm 16 at this time, going to school. Life is good. Dad's got his business. He's not drinking. He's not smoking. He's got money. We're not on welfare. Life is actually good. The best I've ever had up to this point, man. And I remember one time sitting in my room, bro, and I'm listening to some worship music. Again, I'm only 16 years old at this time. I got to go to school tomorrow. I'm painting the picture. And as crazy as it sounds, I heard two voices that night, man. Two voices. One voice told me, he said, "Rick, you're not supposed to be with the girl you're with. You need to break up with her." And the other voice said, "What are you doing with your life? Haven't you lived yet?" And I remember listening to those voices in the middle of this worship music playing in my headphones. The little tape cassette headphones
with the little loop arounds.
Yeah,
the little loop arounds in the foam.
No, this was the metal all the way around the head. The foam headphones. Old school.
Okay.
And you can kind of guess which voice is which, right? And I get this picture of the devil sitting on your shoulder and God sitting on the other one, just talking in your ear. And as any 16-year-old boy would say, I don't want to break up with my girl. I thought I loved this girl. She was my high school sweetheart. We're going to grow up and get married. She's the one. And the other one sounded good, man. I said, you know what? I haven't lived yet. I'm too young for this. Why am I giving up my life? And so I chose to turn my back on my faith, man, right then and there in that room. And I made a decision to turn back to the drugs, back to the partying, back to the friends. And it didn't take long. I mean, it was I called one of my dealers up a week after that, and it was It was right back in it, but it wasn't where it left off before. It was worse. And so I started back in it. Crazy stuff, man. I mean, getting drunk, going to the clubs, going to strip clubs. I mean, I'm only 16, 17 at this time.
So you went
all the way in. Yeah, selling dope, robbing people. I mean, it was nuts. I remember one time I was the girl that I was supposed to break up with. I had her truck, me and my homeboy. We went to the strip club. We had fake IDs and all this stuff, and we're in there. We're getting drunk, and we have all the money, right? We're spreading out all the money, and that makes people jealous in there. And so we walk out. What do? We get jumped. I jump in I jump in the truck, her truck, and I speed off. I'm drunk as hell, and I pull over in this parking lot, King Soopers parking lot, and I just pass out. My boy just gets out and starts walking home. Her dad finds me, picks me up, takes me home. I go crazy in my house. I start cussing and screaming. My dad comes downstairs and socks me in the face, knocks me back about 12 feet. He calls the cops. The cops come.
What did you think about that?
I never got hit that hard in my life. But I mounted up on him, bro. He came down to my room, and I got in his face, and I deserved it, man. He hit me one time, bro, and that was the last time I ever got in his face.
I'm just envisioning this environment of you as a kid and the drugs and the partying and the not sleeping, and you turn your life over to God, and then you're back in it, and you just lose it, you rage, and then your dad punches you in the face.
I was a punk teenager, man.
Yeah,
17 years old. Thought I had it all. I mean, I had wads of cash in my pocket, the call of any amount of drugs at my fingertips. I thought I was the man. I had a fake ID. You know what I mean? And so he called the cops. And in a moment of like sobering up real quick, when the cops got there, I had some drugs on me in my pocket. And so I pulled a move where I just got naked. So they're in there. I'm backed up in the corner in my room. They got their guns drawn, and I just get naked. Because I knew I had some dope in my pocket.
Yep.
I got naked and I threw my shorts in this pile of clothes.
So you're the naked guy.
I'm the naked guy.
Law enforcement officers that train here that we read that talk about.
I'm the naked dude.
You were that guy once.
But I did it because I had dope in my pocket.
Yep.
And so I threw my shorts in this pile of clothes, and sure enough, they never found it, man. And so I saved myself some. But anyways, I went to the hospital. I told them I was going to commit suicide. They put me in an insane asylum for a week. And so that was a moment of getting clean, for me. I got clean, got out, but went straight back into it. So this was my life, man, for 4 years. When I turned my back on God that day, it was 4 years and some change, that I was on this backsliding. So fast forward a little bit. I'm 20 years old, still living the life. I'm at a dad's house. He kicked me out when I was, just towards the end of 17, but I'm on my own. I got my own money. I'm still with this girl. We got our own place. And so I asked her to marry me, man. And she says yes. And so I'm like, sweet, we're getting married. The whole time she doesn't know I'm living this double life. She doesn't know I'm the seller. She doesn't know I'm doing drugs. She doesn't know any of that. She knows a little bit, but not a lot of that.
This is the one that the voice told you was not the one.
This is the woman, the girl.
Go live life.
Yeah.
This is the one who's not the one.
This is the one that's shouldn't be the one. And so I'm hiding it from her and just living life. And I remember, so we were going to get married on July 10th of 2004. We and my boys went up on July 4th of 2004. Or actually, it was the 3rd of July. We're bachelor party. We're up in the mountains. We're shooting guns. We're getting drunk. We're having a good time, riding dirt bikes, doing whatever we wanted, tripping shrooms. I had been up for 2 days prior to that. And so it was not a good scenario. We come down on the mountain. It's the 4th of July. So we were up there all night. My mom was going to have a 4th of July party at her house that night. And she always did every year. It was a big thing. And every year I'd get drunk and get thrown in jail, And so this year I determined this is not going to be the year for that. I'm going to behave. It's going to be awesome. We're just going to have a good time, So go home. Everybody's at the party, ready to get to the party. And it was cool. We were all drinking, having fun. And then all of a sudden I noticed some strange stuff, man, going on between, which was supposed to be my best man at my wedding and my future fiance, this girl. They were acting strange. They were in the room together. They were sitting by each other real closely.
That kind of strange.
Yeah, like touching each other when they're sitting by each other, real flirty and stuff like that. And I'm noticing this throughout the night. And so eventually I pulled him aside. I said, "Hey, what the hell's going on, man?" I used a different word. I used that F word. And I said, "What's going on?" And eventually they confessed they had been sleeping with each other. And so this was my boy that I brought over from Kansas to live in my house because he didn't have nowhere else to go. This was a guy that I cried with growing up. I mean, this was my boy. And it turns out him and my fiance had been sleeping together the whole time. And
So massive betrayal.
massive betrayal.
Then
You know, this is the girl I'm supposed to marry in 6 days. Wedding set. Guests are,
Invitations are out.
invitations are out. The venue is bought. The catering is like everything is set. Big wedding, 300 people. My family is out here from Pennsylvania. They're already here. So this is it. This is it's set in stone. And I can't tell you, bro, in a moment of absolute rage and anger I had in that moment. I mean, I wanted to kill somebody, and I probably could have there if I stayed. But because it was my mom's house, I respectfully, because I told you, I said, I'm not going to make a scene this year. I'm not going to jail this year. I'm not doing it, Ma. And so I left, man, against everybody's telling me no, against my better judgment. I jumped in my truck.
Because you're plastered, you're wasted.
I'm wasted, man. I'm up 2 days, so I'm not thinking straight. I'm hallucinating a little bit. Got alcohol, drugs, meth, everything in my system you can imagine. Jump in my truck, spin out of the cul-de-sac. I'm out on the highway, not on the highway, one of the main roadways, 92nd Sheridan, and I'm heading west or east on 92nd, and I ran one red light, floored it past another red light, and this is like 12:30 in the night this time on the 4th of July. Actually, so now it's the 5th of July, but it's the midnight hour. Yeah. Ran a third red light. I'm coming down to the intersection on 92nd Sheridan. I'm heading east on 92nd.
Hey, thanks for tuning in to the Gentle Art of Leadership podcast. Really excited to bring you this week's episode. As you're watching this episode, will you please do me a couple of favors? Is make sure that you like, leave a comment, subscribe to the channel, and make sure to turn on your notifications so I can send you every week's episode as soon as it releases. And last thing, anybody whose life, leadership, and business you think this show will make better, please share it with them. Thanks for tuning in.
And all of a sudden, I see the light. It's red. I determine in my mind I'm going to run this one too. I don't care. I floor it. I'm going about 80 mile an hour in my truck. I look to my right to see if anybody was coming before I floored it. I didn't see anybody. You could see a long stretch of Sheridan. And then all of a sudden I get down, I'm about 80 mile an hour, and I go through this light, and all of a sudden this guy appears and comes across my path, and I smash right into him, T-bone him. And I'm going, 80 mile an hour. I hit him with enough force that when my truck spun around, it hit the curb with enough force to completely bust off my back tire. I had a gas can in the back of my truck that flew 300 yards east from my truck. My airbag deployed. I open up the door, I stumble to the curb, and I pass out. I wake up to the ambulance there, pass out. Wake up in the ambulance, pass out. Wake up in the hospital, pass out. Wake up, I'm handcuffed to the bed, and there's a cop there. And I knew what was going on. I knew the deal. He starts questioning me about everything, what the contents that was in my truck.
Which are everywhere.
They're scattered everywhere. And to which I don't know what you're talking about. Pull the old, don't tell on your friends sort of thing, right? But I knew what was in there. So I had all my guns in the truck. Remember, we were up shooting the night before. Every single gun I owned, guns that were stolen.
I was going to say all legally
purchased, guns that were legal and guns that were not.
Yep.
On my dash, I had some 12-gauge shells that when I got into the wreck, the box blew up and there were shells everywhere. And so when I opened my truck door, the shells spun out all across the highway. In the back of my truck, in one of my hiding spots, I had a half a pound of methamphetamine. I had baggies, I had a scale, I had weed, I had pills, I had a glass of alcohol that was in my center console that when I wrecked blew up all over the truck. So you imagine the scene, right? You deal with a lot of police officers here. Mm-hmm. Imagine the scene from a cop walking up to this thing, and they're looking at this horrific accident, and they see this, right? And I couldn't fathom what they were thinking. So I knew what was going on, but I wasn't telling, I wasn't snitching, and I went to jail, man. I went to jail they put me in detox for the next 2 days, and then after that I went to jail. Was in jail for 2 weeks and then got bonded out of jail. Obviously the wedding's over at this time. And
wedding's canceled.
The wedding's canceled for sure. You know what I mean?
Okay.
Wedding's canceled. And I always go back, I'm like, man, if I would have just listened to that first voice. God was warning me about this woman. He's seen this before it happened. And you look at that and you go, man, like how many other times in our life have we listened to the wrong voice? the lesser half of reason, right?
Were you confused which was the right voice and the wrong voice, or the voice of God and the voice not of God? Did you know? Did you not know? Looking back,
Not at all. Because I knew the other voice. The other voice meant turn from this and go live your life, you know? And so in that moment, I determined, like when I turned my back on God in that moment, I told God, I'm going to do this on my own. I don't need you. Yeah. And so he let me. He stepped back and said, okay, try it. And that's where it ended up, you know? And so completely broken, completely lost, got out of jail, got bonded out by my dealer of, you know, and what did he do? He came to my house, gave me another pound of meth and said, go get a lawyer. And so I'm right back in it. You know, it's still at my doorstep. And so what do? I take it, I get right back in it. Now I'm doing it again. I'm drinking again. I'm back in the selling. And so I went and got a lawyer, man.
This is literally days after.
2 weeks.
2 weeks out of the hospital.
Out of the hospital. The whole time I'm asking too. So when I woke up in the ambulance a couple times, I asked, is he okay? Is the other driver okay? Yeah. Because I didn't see his vehicle. I don't remember what it looked like, but I do remember his face. I will never forget his face because I seen his face right before I hit him, man. I hit him right on the driver's side of his car, and he was smiling, man. He was looking straight ahead. He didn't even see it coming, you know. And that image is imprinted on my memory. It will be forever, you know. And so here we are, a month after this happened, a month after I got out. I'm working with my dad. My dad's like, okay, come work with me. Let's figure this out together. And I'm on a job site. I'm downtown Denver, and I get a call from my lawyer. And the call, you know, I answer the call, and he says, Rick, I got some bad news. And I said, well, what could be worse than what I'm going through right now? And he said, well, the charge of vehicular assault that you have for hitting Stephen, the other driver's name was Stephen, is changing to vehicular homicide. Stephen died. And I cannot tell you, bro, in that moment, the feeling that I have and still have today that I took an innocent man's life. It was a moment that I sat there and I remember my dad just hugging me and I cried. I cried for an hour. I'm just sitting there bawling my eyes out. And then I wiped my face and I looked at my dad and I said, I'm done. I'm out of here. And I left and I went further down the rabbit hole. Because in my mind, I'm like, dude, my life is over. My life's over. I'm going to go to jail, prison forever. I just killed somebody, you know? I got all these felonies. I'm like, I'm over. You know what I'm going to do? I'm going to go party it up because I'm going away for a long time. And that's what I did, man. I left there. I ended up picking up some more felonies while I was out on bond. I got into some burglary stuff, you know, was burglarizing homes. Got caught again with more drugs, possession. You know, and finally, so this was January 21st of 2005, 6 months after this happened. I'm going to court, you know, they're pushing the date out and all those things. I'm out of state on bond. You're not supposed to do that. You're not supposed to leave state without permission and without telling your bondsman. I didn't do that. I just left. I'm with this girl that I met. We're driving out to Kansas. And all of a sudden we're in the middle of Kansas, close to Salina, and we get pulled over. You know, state patrol's right behind us. But instead of him going to her side of the window, he came to my side and he asked for my ID. And so I gave him my ID, and sure enough, he came up, cuffed me up, had put me in the back seat and took me to jail. And so they knew that I was running. They knew I was out of state on bond. They knew that I was, you know, up to no good. And so I got locked up in a county jail in Salina, Kansas, January 21st of 2005. And that was the last time I seen daylight. I got extradited back from there, back to Adams County. Started my case, going back to court. They pulled my bonds, and so I wasn't getting out. You know, they pulled my bond of $50,000 and raised it to $130,000. I didn't have $130,000. You know, the $50,000 I could do, and I did, but I lost that because they pulled it. Yeah. You know, so I'm done, man. At this point, I'm done. And I remember sitting in a jailhouse church service, if you will. There's like 5 of us in there. It's the most dumpiest place in the world. You got concrete walls on the other. There's a guy that's volunteering, a pastor that came, and God bless his soul. There's 5 of us in the room. We're hopeless. We are all crying. There's no other way to go. And I heard the voice again, the audible voice that I heard back, you know, 4 years prior to that. And the voice said, Rick, are you done? And I knew who it was, you know, and I said, yes, I'm done. And so in that moment, I recommitted my life back to Jesus in that moment. And I determined in that moment to live my life for him 150%, that I was going to go full-fledged into that, and that there was going to be nothing that was going to hold me back, nothing that was going to stop me. And so that's what I did.
Can I ask you a question?
Yeah.
How was that commitment? Because I can hear the difference in that commitment when you share it now, but how was that commitment? Did you realize the difference in that commitment from when you had initially given your life over to God, and then you were in and out and back and forth?
Yeah.
What was different about that commitment? What was it about that voice?
Yeah.
I'm sitting here thinking, you know, the voice or the situation of taking somebody's life, that's loud enough, but you went back to it.
Yeah.
Now you're in prison.
Yeah.
So it didn't sound like it was the loudest voice or the most profound experience. So just what was different about the commitment and the voice, and why did you listen to it that time?
I think the difference was I was at the lowest of lows in my entire life. It was almost like, if I can put it into a picture, that I was sitting at the bottom of a deep well, and I had no other option but to look up, if that makes sense. Yeah. You know, that I was at my bottom. I could not, any lower than that would be death. You know, I killed somebody. I don't have anything to my name. All my stuff is gone. Everybody's deserted me. None of my friends are with me. My future fiance is gone. You know what I mean? Like, I had nothing. And, you know, it was there in that brokenness that God met me, man. He met me again. And it wasn't like a condemning, I told you so. You know, you thought you could go and do it on your own, and here you are. You know, it wasn't like that. It was more like a loving father accepting his son back into the arms of the family, so to speak, you know, that his love was always there. And I remember, man, in the wreck, so as crazy as this sounds, when I go back and look at it and just think about how horrific the accident was, I didn't get hurt. I wasn't wearing a seatbelt. In fact, the only thing that happened to me was little burns on the side of my two wrists from the airbag. But the moment I hit Stephen, it was almost as if I was in this cocoon of safety, where, you know, the Bible talks about that we have guardian angels, right? And that our angels are with us. And in the moment of the accident, I felt like this around me, and it was so peaceful. I cannot understand this. I can't explain it, and I don't understand it. That it was so peaceful, and it was like I was in this cocoon of just comfort and peace. And then all of a sudden, when it was over, it was like, you know, this whole time, I don't understand why God saved me and not him.
So I'm listening to this, and I know where the story goes from here. We're gonna get to it, and we're gonna get to all the wisdom, all the flip side of this story.
Yeah.
But Stephen's dead.
Yeah.
So what do you say to that? How do you still answer that question today for the people that knew him, for the people that were part of his life and whose life that he was a part of?
That's something that I, you know, in prison, it took me a while to reconcile that, you know, and to understand truly the magnitude of my decision. You know, that I caused an innocent man to die. And how do you justify that? How do you rectify that? How do you make that better? You know, I don't think you can. I don't think you can justify. You can't rectify that. An innocent man lost his life for no reason, you know? And I've wrestled with this, and I've struggled with this, and I prayed about this. And the best way that I could even come close to rectifying his death is to change my life. You know, I vowed this in prison, that I was not going to let his death be in vain. I was not. That I was going to use this as an opportunity to change my life. Because God forbid that I go back. God forbid that I do the same things that I did before. God forbid that I waste this opportunity, you know, of an innocent man losing his life. And so, you know, he unknowingly sacrificed his life to save mine. That's the best way I can put it, you know. He didn't have to die. I didn't have to do any of those things, but I chose to, you know. And you know, the way that I say I'm sorry is how I live my life now. And I give him honor, and I give him respect, you know, through the way I live my life, and through the people that I help to change, and the stories that I tell, and, you know, and I account the people that get impacted by me and my story. I account them to him, not me, you know.
Yeah.
Because without that, and without me grabbing a hold of it and using it to change my life, no, it would never have happened. You know, and so that's how I come close. You can't come close, you know, thank God Stephen didn't have kids. He didn't have a wife. It doesn't make it any better. It doesn't make it any better. But it makes it a little better, that there's not orphan kids out there, and a widow that have to think about this every day,
Because your choices within your story that connected with his and took his life leaves an impact on different people's
It's
stories.
a ripple effect. Yeah, it is a ripple effect.
And this is what this podcast and Gentle Art of Leadership, everything is all about. So we're sitting here. We're about 3/4 of the way through the podcast. We're torn open here, and I'm sure people watching and listening to this maybe too. Where do things go from here? Because you go to prison, you made that commitment, and then we're back to the beginning of the story where you see the sign in the ditch. You call me, and you're just Bible thumping Rick. So take us back.
Yeah. So
and where do we go from here? So we're sitting here today, 2023.
Yeah.
Where's the beauty? Where are the lessons? What do you share with people that are going through this?
Yeah.
And how does it help the people watching? So share that.
Yeah.
And then we're going to wrap up with something really cool here.
Absolutely. So, in jail, court's done, gets sentenced, 12 years for the vehicular homicide, 8 years for the possession of drugs, another 8 years for burglary, another 8 years for burglary, another 5 years for possession of drugs. And so that was the charge of my sentence. They ran it all concurrent, which basically I could do, which was 12 years. I only did 5 on those 12. I got out January 10th of 2000, March 10th of 2010, and was in the halfway house up here in Fort Collins. Was in there for about 8 months. Got out on an ankle bracelet. Was on the ankle bracelet for about 1.5 years. Got out on parole. Was on parole for another 3.5 years. I was on parole when I was working for you, man. I don't know if you remember, but I had to. I was still piss testing and drug testing.
Can I share? Because we can't ignore this.
Yeah.
So you share this story,
Yeah.
I'm blown away, and I say, you know what? That bravery, that vulnerability, that honesty in your story, and I wasn't upset.
No,
I was actually
no.
happy that you took a minute for us to get to know each other.
Yeah.
But you share that, and just like the first time I was vulnerable, and somebody says, "Man, you're the kind of guy I want to do business with. You're the kind of guy I want working on our team, and I'm going to go to bat for you." We took the leadership team to Vegas with spouses.
Yeah.
In 2015, December 2015.
Yeah.
And I think we're getting ready to go to a Cirque du Soleil show, right? We just had this speaker coach come into this big suite, we're doing this team building, and we're going to Cirque du Soleil. And then you got to go piss in Vegas.
Well, I was surprised, bro. I let my PO, hey, I'm going to Vegas for a company trip.
Can't believe they let you.
I can't believe they let me go, but he did, and it was awesome. And sure enough, when you have random UAs, you got to call every day, and if your color comes up, you got to go. It doesn't matter where you are, what you're doing. Within 24 hours, you got to go piss.
Yep.
And so sure enough, in Vegas, my color got called, and I knew it was going to. You know that. So I had to find a place to do it in. Hop on a taxi back then, because Uber wasn't a big thing. And taxi, and went and did it. I mean, it cost 4 times as much out there for some reason. But yeah, it was that was my life, man.
Yeah.
And, I got off parole in September of 2016 and, found a beautiful wife. We have 3 beautiful kids, and I'm now a full-time pastor, man, at a church.
4-time felon.
4-time felon.
You're now a
full-time pastor.
2 of the kids came at once.
2 of the kids got twin daughters.
All that life happened at once.
Everything.
Marriage, 2 kids, job change.
All of it, yeah. And so I started working for you that first year of marriage, man. Mm-hmm. It was a rough first year for me and my wife. I mean, we almost ended it in the first 3 months. It was tough. And then we're pregnant with twins, and now I'm like, okay, I need a real job because I got a family now.
Question. Somebody's listening to this. Somebody's watching this that's ready to end it. Why didn't you end it? Looking back, what decisions did you make? What conversations did you have?
The marriage you're talking about?
Yeah.
Yeah. One, the conviction of my faith, about being divorced. And 2, it was that generational curse thing, man. I'm not going to continue the generational curse of divorcing my wife. My dad did it. His dad, you know what I mean? Like, it was a generational thing. Yeah. And so these generational curses are a real thing, man. Mm-hmm. Your grandpa drank, you drank, your dad drank, you know what I mean? Like, they go down the line. But they don't have to keep going. They can stop with you.
Yeah. So you're changing the family tree.
I'm changing the family tree, the whole family dynamic. It's stopping with me, My kids are not going to know what it's like to have a parent that drinks. Yeah. They don't. They've never seen a bottle of alcohol in our home.
So we talk about the example of a tree and how it grows. And it starts with a seed. That seed falls from a parent tree.
Yeah.
And you can't control the DNA of that. You came from your parents. And
Yeah.
You land in this soil.
Yeah.
And you're watered or you're not. You're cultivated or you're not. So you're in bad foundation, bad soil, generational sin curses in this seed.
Yeah.
And then you just root into that. And God keeps trying to pull you out and show you where to go. And you're like, nah, I'm going to dig in. I'm going to dig in. I'm going to dig in.
Yeah.
I'm going to put my faith in this.
Yeah.
And now you're out. And here we are.
Yeah.
Pissing in Vegas.
Pissing in Vegas.
You saw me in 2015 at probably the last moment I had a rage that I don't ever want to see
One of your lows. Yeah.
Yeah. And you were there right there with me, making sure that I didn't kill somebody.
Yeah.
So we're on this journey together.
Mm-hmm.
And now we're sitting here, what are we, 40 something?
Yeah.
And you're going to be a forever blue belt in jiu-jitsu. You're not going to leave the podcast.
I'll get back one day.
without
I'll get
talking
back
about
one day.
that. We're rolling on the mats together, working together.
Yeah.
One of the coolest memories I have is everybody that works here at Sevilla Holdings, all the companies, they spend a year here, we pay for their life plan. You leave the life plan and you know what that one sentence is, why you exist. So I'm on the Camino in Northwest Spain, 2019 summer, 4th day in. And that was the 2nd day, last day of your life plan. And I remember you wrapped it up. You told me I wrapped it up.
Yeah.
And I said, why do you exist in one sentence? Because that's what you leave the life plan with.
Yeah.
And I remember that like it was yesterday.
Yeah.
So talk about that. Because for me, that was this really pivotal moment of like, dude, I'm proud of you.
Yeah.
So talk about that.
Well, I remember that because I actually sat you down before you left on the Camino. And I said, Matt, the only time I would ever leave your company is if I got offered a job at the church. And, sure enough, my pastor said, hey, we want to hire you full time as a pastor. Yeah. And, I got the utmost respect for you. And, again, I'm a firm believer in you leave a season well, you'll start a season well. You never burn bridges, never in my life. And so, sat you down and you had this look of shit, I'm about to lose one of my best people.
Yeah.
And
I knew I didn't want it to happen.
Yeah.
But I knew it was supposed to happen.
Yeah. And it was and you said, before you make that decision, I'm going to send you to a life plan. Yeah. And you paid for it, man. Thank you so much.
Were you the first one?
I was the first one. Yeah.
Did I start doing that because of you?
Yeah.
I think I did.
Yeah, you did. Yeah. Sweet. Yeah. And so I went to
Thanks
life
for
plan.
That.
Yeah, dude. It changed my life, man. And went to life plan, sat for 2.5 days and, just basically documented my life on paper. And it was intense. There was a lot of tears, a lot of emotion, a lot of, figuring out who I was and coming to this point and trying to make a decision and all those things. And at the end of that life plan, all of the decisions and everything pointed to me becoming a full-time pastor. Yeah. And so that reaffirmed that decision for me, and so that's the decision, the route I went. But, at the end of each life plan, you come away with a life statement. And, I view life as a battlefield. Every day I wake up and I go to battle. When I come home, I put my boots up, I put my weapons down, I go to sleep, I wake up, I put them on, and I'm in the battle, every single day. And that's part of my statement, man. And so my statement as a whole is raised and redeemed from the ashes, accepted as a son. I am called to the battlefield to lead, nurture, teach, and ignite with passion and excellence in my family first and this world second. Yeah. And so I left there with that. And it sums up my journey. It sums up who I am, that I am called to the battlefield to lead people, to nurture them, to pastor them, to teach them, to ignite, to spark somebody, to inflame and put passion on the inside of them. That's what I live and breathe every single day. And so I left there with that and started that journey of being a pastor, and it was tough. It was hard.
Question.
Yeah.
So you're so clear and so certain and so passionate about that purpose when you found that in 2019.
Yeah.
We're sharing your story back to 2004 and all of this on paper. Yeah. You should be so dead, so in prison. Yeah. Dead in prison. Yeah. And you're here. So somebody that's been told that they're never going to be anything. They're never going to get there. That's very similar to my story. This is where you should be on paper based on everything. Yeah. Here's where you are. What are 2 to 3 just takeaways to sum this all up? And then we're going to get to your paint swatch. Yeah. What are a couple of things that you would say to that person? Because I've been there and I know what I would say. Yeah. What would you say to that person?
I would say, don't give up, that there is hope. You've heard my story, that there's hope. Even in the most hopeless situation, there's always hope. As long as you have breath in your lungs, there is hope. And, I look at that and I go back to my story, and I remember it was like I was standing at the bottom of this giant mountain, and then I remember when I was at the top of that mountain, looking down the other side. And now I'm looking back on the mountain, going, how did I ever get through that? Yeah. How did I ever make it out of that? I attribute most of that to God, bro. I really do, in my life, man, that he was the one who saw me through, who protected me, who kept me going, and who continues to do so even today. And I look at that and I go, man, without God, where would I be? The statistics of people like my upbringing, there are 3 places they go. They go to the grave, they go to prison, or they go to the streets. They're homeless. And the recidivism rate for people with my sort of history is like 80%. You get out and you go back. You get out and you go back. You get out and you go back, And so I'm a miracle, man. My life is a miracle, that I made it on the other side. And there's people that need to hear that. They need to hear the miracle of, wow, this guy went through something and he come out on the other side. Yep. And now he's living a life for God, yep. And so one thing I didn't share that I want to leave with you is when I was 15, I was at a church service and the pastor prophesied over me that I was going to be a pastor someday. This is 20 plus years ago. And now that I look back, it was shortly after that prophetic over my life that I started to turn on God. And it wasn't until I got ordained as a pastor in 2020 that God brought that back to my memory. And you know who ordained me?
I don't. No.
The same pastor who prophesied that over me 20 plus years ago.
Wow.
Isn't that amazing? That church that happened in, I lost touch with that church because I went to prison. And in 2016, my brother called me up and he said, hey, do you know Aaron? We were all youth back then in that church. Yeah, how could I forget? I've always wondered what happened to that church. Well, guess what? Aaron is now a pastor, and he has a church plant in Loveland, which is where we were living, and it's called Citipointe. And I just felt God drop the biggest bomb in my heart. And I said, I got to go check this out. And I went there, and I just felt God touch me in that place. And he said, this is where I want you to plant. And so that's where we went. We moved, and that's where we've been this whole time. And it was 3 years after that where I got ordained by Pastor Mark Ramsey, who spoke that word over me in a church in 96, called Citipointe Christian Outreach Center. Mm-hmm. And so God he brought everything all full circle back in my life. And the stamp of approval on my life, and I call this the stamp of redemption on my life, where God finally said, you're redeemed fully, was the birth of my son, Josiah. His name means Jehovah has healed. And I had a friend pray over me. He said, Rick, I'm going to pray that God would show you something specific about Josiah. And sure enough, he was born on 8/28, which Romans 8:28 is one of my favorite scriptures, which says all things work together for the good of those who love God, all things. So everything that I've went through my entire life from birth until now, the wreck, the drugs, the divorce, everything was working together for my good. And that's what God showed me. And it was like his stamp of, boom, your life is redeemed now, Rick. Now go get him.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so, man, I cannot tell you how awesome it's been. Being a full-time pastor is like standing on the side of a train, going a million miles an hour, reaching your hand out, grabbing it, and then holding on for dear life. Yeah. That's what it's like. But it's so fulfilling, man. And it's so cool, And
our speeding trains tend to cross in the night.
Yeah. I'm like, Matt.
Hey, good to see you. Yeah. Now we're on the podcast. We have an hour today. It's been amazing. Like we're wrapping up an
that was quick.
Amazing hour.
Yeah.
So as we wrap up, we do something really special here with the podcast. Is right outside the wall. Yeah. We have a big wall of paint swatches, and people that come in here to share their story. They pick their favorite color. You picked yours. And you got it. So grab it real quick.
Yeah.
And what's more important than the color is you get to write something on that card and leave your mark and make your mark and paint your color on the wall. And it's the one sentence statement verse. What do you want to leave this world with, and what do you want to leave this show with? So what do you want to leave the world with when you go? And how do you want to close up this show?
Yeah. Well, I've already said it, but it's my life statement, man. I want to leave people with this because if there's one thing I've learned, that I have been raised and redeemed. right? That I have raised and redeemed from the ashes, so to speak. If you look at my life, it's ashes, man. It's a heartache, hard life that there's kids out there that going through the same thing. But I've been raised and redeemed. I know I'm accepted as a son, that God has accepted me as a son, that he's healed that daddy wound in my life, between my father and him, that I'm called to this battlefield to lead people, to nurture them, and to teach them. That's my identity, and that's what I do best. And then I ignite on the inside of them the passion for life, and I do it with excellence. And so I wanted to leave that here with you guys as a reminder of me, that there's a guy out there who made it, that he went to bat with the devil and he won. And I'm here to tell anybody, man, that you can do anything. You can, if you are in a situation in your life where you are facing a hopeless scenario, you have so many different options, but why not try Jesus, man? Why not? What do you got to lose?
Yeah.
What do you got to lose? And so, that's what I want to leave you here with, man. There's that.
Thank you. Thank you for your story.
Oh, thanks for having me.
And sharing it with our story.
Yeah.
You're always going to be a part of our story and everything we have going on.
Absolutely.
Here. And for sharing that with people.
Yeah.
That's a wrap.
Yeah. Thank you, brother. Woo.